the back pages. A lot of the newspapers did have that team, turns out. They weren't quite saying it was named, but they certainly had that selection. Schmidt puts full faith in Larmour for full back role, writes Rory O'Connor here. Coach names new look back three as Carney and Earls lose fitness race for Cup Opener. It was interesting to hear that early in that press conference, Joe Schmidt said that Carberry and Earls were very close, and that it looks like Carberry is going to be the 24th man as well, should there be any late fall off on that Irish team. I mean, maybe it's all a great ruse and Carberry is actually going to go in there. He would be a better utility back option than most of the players that are there. And also Carl Dennehy writing here that English calls for transparency after omission from Worlds. This is the news that a frustrated Mark English has hit out at the lack of transparency from a sports governing body, as it's put here, after the three-time European medalist missed out on a place at this year's World Championships. He missed out due to places being taken by unqualified athletes. The IAAF allow each federation to enter one male and one female athlete who haven't hit the qualifying mark, but he hasn't been that selection from an Irish point of view. And it seems like 8 such athletes from different countries elected to run the men's 800 metres, and it means that English will be forced to watch from home, despite running several seconds quicker than all of them.
It's bizarre.
So it's a bit of a bizarre story, but there will, and I'm certain there will be another side to this. There'll be some statement, I'm sure, from his governing body at some point today.
The Star goes with Noel Mooney. Almost Noel, but Noel Mooney. Chief rules out staying at FAI. This is a story that Noel Mooney has categorically ruled out remaining on as FAI General Manager when his 6-month contract expires at the end of November. He has also said he won't be applying for the permanent post as the association's Chief Executive when it's advertised in the coming weeks. It does beg the question of what has been the point of Noel Mooney back at the FAI. He's been very public online, on Twitter, in interacting with the grievances of Irish football supporters and trying to get people into a room. Obviously he was in contact with Brian Kerr and certainly seems to have been doing the positive thing of trying to mend the issues that were there. Owen Hand is back in, invited to games. He's been on off the ball, airing his issues with the FAI from the previous regime. But he's doing all these things and then he's riding off to the sunset next month. So, like, who's going to follow through on any promises or any discussions? What's the point in having all these conversations if he's not actually going to be there to follow them through?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what sort of long-term strategy he has put in place, but from what I can gather, having spoken to people even over the last week or two, that he has done a lot of really good work on the process of things, and they were obviously in a bit of a bind, I suppose, to put it as softly as is possible, a bit of a bind when he came in, and we were seen obviously as a safe pair of hands who knew the scene, I suppose, apart from anything else, because he could have easily have brought in, parachuted somebody in from the outside just to get them through all that. There was now always the indication that he was going to leave when he got towards the end of his tenure. That seems to be the way it's going to be. But it does seem like he has been a fairly safe pair of hands over the last 6 months. He's been somewhat transparent, as you say. He's been out on Twitter and he's been answering questions about those things in so much as he can, given that he's now exiting stage left. But definitely, from what I've heard, the strategy and the process of things in the background, that's the boring stuff about getting everything back in line. It seems like he's been actually pretty good at that.
Yeah, and well, really, I guess we're still only in the middle of this because all the reports are just going to start coming out over the next few weeks. So he will be there for some of that, and obviously
what happens after that?
Well, do you wait for try and bring somebody else in? The post of CEO is going to be advertised. I think we're entering a period of nobody can quite be sure, because we have to wait for these reports. An awful lot of people are going to come up in those reports. Like, we're talking 3 or 4 reports, the Mazars report due out over the next few weeks, as to who is in a position to apply for the role of CEO. Like, Donald Conway is still there as president. I think, unfortunately for Noel Mooney, it seemed as though his hands were tied with that while Mooney was there, while Rhea Walsh was there, and while he was there, it did seem as though it was far too strong a connection to the old regime. So they said a chief executive role is going to be advertised in the next few weeks. Presumably that person, it'll be early new year. A lot of the reports will be out by then, and maybe they can have some sort of a clear run at trying to rescue the situation. The other story, which is an interesting one in the back of the Irish Daily Star, is Jack is 1 in a million. Shamrock Rovers will seek a new Irish record transfer fee, possibly running into €1 million plus, before considering any offers for Jack Byrne. He's under contract until the end of the 2021 season. They got 350 grand for Graham Burke when he went to Preston. Even €1 million, listen, it's a gigantic leap forward for Irish football. €1 million is nothing.
Shouldn't it be more about putting in sell-on structures. Like that, surely that's where the money is.
I'm sure there would be part of that as well within this, and listen, it's, I guess, chicken and egg in terms of, so you get €1 million in for Jack Byrne, suddenly you can offer your younger players long-term contracts, which means when clubs come sniffing around them, you can demand a better fee, because the biggest part of the problem all these clubs have had is it's short-term contracts, everybody's out of a deal in 6 months' time, so you can't actually demand any sort of a fee.
No, and like you've the unusual situation where, like, obviously Dundalk would have earned vast multiples of that sum in their European run. That was a far more profitable thing. Normally it's the sell-on of your best players that brings in the money. Who was was it 350 grand the previous
for
high?
Graham Burke?
Was that the previous high? Are you saying that with any confidence? You're our
no, I'm running back through my mind very quickly of
Shamrock Rovers fan. Is that fair enough to say?
No, I go to Shamrock Rovers because they're the closest club to where I live. I'm a Galway United man.
Yeah, quite that.
My children are Shamrock Rovers supporters, though.
But you're done now. Conway Call is the top line here. The Irish Daily Mail this morning. Rory Keane, Munster man to face Scots in Cup opener. We've been bringing that news that Andre Conway starts on the right wing, Jordan Larmour at full back, and Greenwood to the rescue for United is the splash here. 17-year-old, I think it's 2 weeks' time he turns 18. Mason Greenwood with a pretty stunning goal, it has to be said, from a Manchester United side who couldn't hit a barn door last night by all accounts from all of their more experienced players. So Mason Greenwood to the rescue. On
the back of The Guardian, fired up Robert Kitson on rugby's chance to shine in Japan. Some other stories of interest there. Billy Vinipola, Tonga and me. Interesting story inside on an emotional Billy Vinipola, ready to follow in his family footsteps. Both his father and his uncle appeared in a World Cup. 20 years ago, his dad, Feo, and his brother, Elisi, were part of the Tonga side who played England at Twickenham. And 2 decades on, Billy picks up the torch. And the other story, which is in a lot of the English papers, in particular down the bottom, Beardsley banned, coach racially abused black players. And this is obviously a huge story in English football, that former England striker, former Liverpool striker, Peter Beardsley, banned from football for 32 weeks. Pretty shocking stuff within this. Found guilty of 3 charges of racially abusing black players while coach of the Newcastle under-23 team. And Peter Beardsley went to a committee, and the panel concluded that it was obviously racist and wholly unacceptable what he says. Several players from the underage system came forward with evidence. So even though it's a 32-game ban, it is hard to see how Peter Beardsley can have 32-week ban. It's hard to see how Peter Beardsley can have any future in English football. Yeah,
reading the quotes, which we won't repeat because they're pretty distasteful, like, he deserves everything he gets, and also deserves to be made an example of, I think, because actually it's the only way to... You need to send out some sort of message that is cut through right through the grades as well, right? Like a lot of this is about sending a message to the wider football family, to borrow that expression, that this stuff is just not on.
Peter Beardsley is obviously a huge name within English football, certainly for anyone, maybe younger listeners don't remember Peter Beardsley, but he was very much a part of that unbelievable Liverpool side of the late 80s. And the fact, 32 games does seem quite, 32 weeks does seem quite lenient when you realise, like, he didn't put his hands up and admit this. In fact, the Commission condemned Beardsley's assertion that 3 back players had been making up the allegations because they were motivated by financial greed. Not only did Mr. Beardsley allege that some of the players had put their heads together to tell serious and hugely damaging lies, but he advanced a florid story of greedy motives implicating the agent of 2 of them, which he must have known did not have a shred of evidence.
Yeah, and I know what you're saying, it is somewhat lenient, but the reality is that his
reputation
career
is destroyed forever.
Media career is shall never appear again, I would suggest. The Irish Examiner, meanwhile, on this Friday morning, it's got a beautiful image there from Rugby World Cup in Japan. Big in Japan, the wait is over. Rugby World Cup 2019 kicks off, and indeed we are just under 4 hours away now from the start between Japan and Russia, and more reflection on Mason Greenwood's goal last night for United.
On the back of the Herald, similar to a lot of the Irish papers, the picture is of Mason Greenwood after his goal. The story is on the Irish team news, but also Con O'Callaghan was out doing media duties yesterday. He said, "I hope Jim stays on." Con O'Callaghan says it's absolutely his decision. All the players love playing for him. I don't know. There's been a lot of talk in the media, but as far as we're concerned, it's the same as usual. Celebrate for the next couple of months, reconvene come December, do it all again.
So the Sun, meanwhile, nice one, Mason.
Nice one, Mason. Am I missing?
I mean,
one?
He's won the game for them.
Okay.
Yeah. Manchester United won a standing nil at Sand. Let's Joe easy on them, writes Neil Reardon here as well. Joe Schmidt has played it safe by not picking any of his injury concerns for the big one on Sunday.
The back of the Mirror, green shoots for Ole. Mason makes history to rescue Solskjaer's United. Gary Ringrose getting the nod, and also touching on Arsenal. Impressive 3-0 win against Frankfurt. Emery backs Super Kids. Unai Emery praising the likes of Joe Willock and Bukayo Saka, who were both on target in last night's win.
The Times London edition, Beardsley is banned for racist abuse. That's the story that Nathan's been telling you about there a few minutes ago. The thoughts here, Martin Ziegler, and also that photograph there of Owen Farrell training to lift the Rugby World Cup on. Like, they just can't help themselves. Like, ease back in the throttle a little bit, lads. Give it a few weeks, let the excitement build up, and then be writing stuff about that. We might talk a little bit later on in the show about the ad that's been released for the English rugby team as well, which is... I mean, I don't know what it is, but it's bizarre.
Entertaining.
It's certainly bizarre.
The Irish Times sports section, that photograph of that advertising installation has got a lot of traction in the papers this morning. They also have that photograph. Nice. Thundery skies could be an omen for the real business. A preview of the tournament from Jerry Thornley, also from Liam Toland. Standard says game needs to rid itself of doping. This obviously covered in depth on the yesterday morning's OTB AM. The quotes from CJ Standard. The papers really just getting around to it today. Not a huge amount of coverage of it actually in the papers, because it is more preview now that we are on the actual eve of the tournament. But CJ Standard's quotes of not really seeing any doping in South Africa, very much a story yesterday. Yeah,
you just want to hear player, like, outside of, you know, it's extremely unlikely that a player's going to come out and say, oh, I saw all of that going on. You just want to make sure that the debate is nice and open, and there's no, because we've seen little bits and pieces this week where players or coaches have been just keen to shut down the conversation and not entertain it at all. You just would like to see at very least that it's an open forum.
I don't think we're going to get that in the middle of a World Cup. I think we'll get some honest opinion, but it's very difficult to see. Like, all the media advisors who are around these teams are going to be saying, shut it down, shut it down, don't say anything.
Have you one more for us?
One more. This is the Telegraph, and again, it is very much a Rugby World Cup preview. Blockbuster fixtures, contenders galore, glorious backdrop, hope and expectation. It is time for action, Mick Cleary's preview. And contenders galore, I guess, is one of the major talking points that actually... It feels, because the All Blacks have come back to the pack, that there is no standout contender. That any one of 6 or 7 teams, you wouldn't be surprised to see win this.
Yeah. Who are you going for?
The All Blacks. Jesus, who are you going for?
I don't know. I want to see the first round of games, to be honest, before I get too carried away with it. But it's difficult, because it could be any one of those. It could easily be England. It could easily be South Africa. Like, New Zealand is the very obvious one.
Like, I am a great believer in the mantra of tournaments taking on a life of its own, because looking at so many of the previews around England, and Owen Farrell is clearly the golden boy. Like, it's such an attritional game now. Owen Farrell can so easily get injured, and that's it. It's done for England.
I mean, you could say similar things about Ireland.
Exactly, but that is going to happen to 2 or 3 of these teams, that they will lose their talisman.
They can afford to lose Owen Farrell
more than Ireland can lose Johnny Sexton. Yeah. Well, Owen Farrell isn't even starting it out half tomorrow. George Ford is. So
yeah, and that will continue during the tournament. Colin Murphy has been in touch on Facebook. Says Conway's only the second choice fullback at Munster. That's not good enough to be first choice for Ireland. # common sense. Our best 8 not playing. No Cronin off the bench is a huge loss. Not feeling optimistic. So this is not the fake news media. This is Colin Murphy on Facebook. And Donald Moore wondering, who's Owen Shane? As in Shane. Shane is actually how
the
you
Kerry pronunciation, is it?
Pronounce his name. That's where we're going to leave that for the minute. Just to let you know as well that Bowl Sports World Grand Prix of Darts returns to the City West Convention Centre from the 6th to the 12th of October, and all this week on OTB AM. But thanks to the PDC, we're giving you the chance to win the ultimate darting experience. You and a guest are going to win 2 VIP tickets to the Bowl Sports World Grand Prix final, plus a night stay at the City West Hotel, including breakfast on that Saturday. And we're also giving you a pair of tickets to Friday's semi-finals. That's each morning this week to give away. So there are 2 steps to enter the competition, and there have been a bucket load of you so far this week, so do get into the action. Firstly, you've got to share the OTB AM stream wherever it is you're watching or listening. You can retweet if you're tweeting this competition, which we will be doing, and tell us who won the 2015 World Grand Prix of darts. Who was it? And retweet the stream as well. Tickets as well, by the way, can be purchased at ticketmaster.ie, where you just go on there and search darts. Pretty decent prize, Nathan. Are you a darts man?
I like on a Thursday evening, if there's nothing else on, I'll sit and watch it.
Been to the darts?
I've been to the darts. Were we both at the darts?
Yeah,
once upon a time in the Three Arena?
Yeah, Three Arena.
Yeah, like the darts was kind of irrelevant.
Yeah, it was, yeah. It's also really hard to see.
Well, they've giant screens, Adrian. Like, if they didn't have the giant screens, you wouldn't be able to see a single thing.
It's a bit like...
it's a good night out, though.
I was at a college football match at the weekend now.
Oh, well, here we go. It's weird. It's weird. You weren't here last Friday, so you were in Chicago?
Yeah, South Bend, yeah.
Right, so you were over there for 4 days working at a college football game because Notre Dame are coming to town.
They are coming to town on August, I think, 29th next year to take on Navy in the Aer Lingus College Football Series.
That's enough of the plugs. That's all well and good. I haven't seen any footage from... Like, there's literally no proof that you were there. That will all become evident, Nathan. You just don't worry your cotton socks about that one.
Grand.
You had a good time, though?
It was
treated well?
It was a brilliant trip, fact-finding mission.